Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Welcome to a new video of Cambridge Eyes, and this is a video about the eyes reading, and the question type is true, false, not given, or yes, no, not given. These type of the questions come very often in eyes reading. So in this video I'm going to give you some tips and strategies that how can you solve this part of the eyes reading test. So whenever these types of questions come in the eyes reading test, you have to need to read the title of the passage. After reading the title of the passage, you can get the idea that what type of the information the writer has given in the passage. After this, read the statement, underline the keywords, get the main idea of the statement or question, and try to find that idea in the reading passage. So here you have to be very careful, because the words which you will read in the questions or statements will not exactly the same words in the reading passage. These are the similar meaning words. So you have to be very careful in solving this part of the test. It means that you have to remember the synonyms and paraphrases. Without the synonyms and paraphrases, you can't do the eyes reading test. Now the question arises that which type of the statement or question is true or yes, and which type of the statement is false or no, and which type of the statement or question is not given. So if you find the information in the passage related to the question or statement, or if you find any information in the passage that matches with the statement or the question, then that question or statement is true or yes. If you find any information that contradicts with the statement or the question, then that question or statement is false or no. And if you didn't find any kind of information related to the statement in the question section, then that statement or question is not given. So let's go to the test and try to solve this part of the test. But before we solve the test, please like the video and subscribe my YouTube channel. Question number 19. About 1,000 of women interviewed by the researchers had learned to read when they were children. It means that researchers interviewed 1,000 women who learned the art of reading when they were in the childhood. 1,000 women learned to read, and children are the key words. Let's try to find the answer of question number 19. In paragraph 4, during this period, researchers from the Liverpool School of Tropical Medicine, the Central American Institute of Health in Nicaragua, the National Autonomous University of Nicaragua, and the Costa Rican Institute of Health interviewed nearly 3,000 women. So 3,000 women is the key word. Some of whom had learned to read as children. So the word some is also a key word, which means small number of. Some during the literacy crusade, and some who had never learned at all. It means that the researcher interviewed 3,000 women, whereas in the question number 19, the number of women is 1,000. And in those 3,000 women, some of the women learned to read in their childhood. It means small number of women learned to read as children. Some during the literacy crusade, and some of the women who had never learned to read at all. It means they didn't pay any attention to education. So our answer for the question number 19 is not given, because question number 19 is about 1,000 of women interviewed by the researchers who had to learn to read. They were children, Whereas in paragraph 4, we have read that 3,000 women were interviewed, some of whom learned to read as children, some during the literacy crusade, and some who had never learned at all. So we can say that the actual number of women is not given. Because in the question 1000 women are mentioned who were interviewed, but in the passage we read some women learned to read as children. So we can say that in the passage we didn't read about the exact figure of the women who learned to read as children, and word some is written to show some numbers of women or small number of women. And in the question 1000 is written. Therefore, we can say that the answer of the question number 19 is not given. Question number 20. Before the National Literacy Crusade, illiterate women had approximately the same levels of infant mortality as those who had learned to read in primary school. It means that before the National Literacy Crusade or before the National Literacy Campaign, the death rate of 1 year children of uneducated women is same as the women of those who had got the primary school education. So the keywords in the question number 20 are before, illiterate women, same levels, infant mortality, and primary school. Illiterate woman means uneducated woman. Infant mortality means the rate of death of 1 year children. Let's move to the passage and we'll try to find the answer for the question number 20. And we read the paragraph number 5. The investigators' findings were striking. In the late 1970s, the infant mortality rate for the children of illiterate mothers was around 110 deaths per 1,000 live births. So 110 deaths per 1,000 live births are the keywords in the paragraph. At this point in their lives, those mothers who later went on to learn to read had a similar level of child mortality. That is 105 per 1,000. For women educated in primary school, however, the infant mortality rate was significantly lower at 80 per 1,000. So we have read that the infant mortality rate for children of illiterate mothers was around 110 deaths per 1,000 live births. And the women who had learnt in primary school, however, the infant mortality rate was significantly lower at 80 per 1,000. Whereas in the question, before the National Literacy Crusade, illiterate women had approximately the same levels of infant mortality as those who had learned to read in the primary school. So the same levels are the keywords, are the main words in the question. So we could not find the similarity. There is a difference in infant mortality rate. The infant mortality rate of uneducated women is 110 deaths per 1,000 live births, whereas the infant mortality rate is at 80 per 1,000 in the women who had got primary education. So the answer of the question number 20 is no. Question number 21. Before and after the National Literacy Crusade, the children mortality rate for the illiterate women stayed at about 110 deaths for each 1,000 live births. It means that before and after the National Literacy Crusade or campaign, the infant mortality rate remained unchanged for the uneducated women. So stayed at is the key word, and that word is the similar word for the word unchanged. So mortality rate is the keyword, literate woman is the keyword, about 110 death is the keyword. Let's try to find the answer for the question number 21. In paragraph 5, the investigators' findings were striking. In the late 1970s, the infant mortality rate for the children of illiterate mothers was around 110 deaths per 1,000 live births. So, in paragraph 5, we have read about the rate of infant mortality rate for uneducated women. That was 110 deaths per 1,000 live births. And if we continue this paragraph further, at this point in their lives, those mothers who later went on to learn to read had a similar level of child mortality, that is 105 per 1,000. For women educated in primary school, however, the infant mortality rate was significantly lower at 80 per 1,000. So, we couldn't find whether the rate changed or unchanged in the paragraph 5 because we have read the word state in the question number 21, which means unchanged. Let's read the next paragraph, and next paragraph is paragraph number 6. In 1985, after the National Literacy Crusade had ended, it means after the National Literacy Crusade, the infant mortality figures for those who remain illiterate, and these are the figures for those women who are illiterate, who are uneducated, and for those educated in primary school remained more or less unchanged. It means that the women who were illiterate and the women who were educated till their primary education, the mortality rate was same and they remained unchanged. So it means that the infant mortality rate for the uneducated women and for the women who had got primary level education remained unchanged. Unchanged means stayed, which is mentioned in the question. So the answer for the question number 21 is yes, because the question is before and after the National Literacy Crusade, the child mortality rate for the illiterate women stayed at about 110 deaths for each 1,000 live births. And we have also read in the paragraph 6 that infant mortality rate for the illiterate women remained unchanged. Question number 22. The women who had learned to read through the National Literacy Crusade showed the greatest change in infant mortality level. It means that the infant mortality rate has changed a lot for all those women who had got education through National Literacy Crusade. So woman is the keyword, read through the National Literacy Crusade is the keyword, great change is the keyword, and infant mortality is also the keyword. Let's read the paragraph 6. In 1985, after the National Literacy Crusade had ended, it means when the National Literacy campaign came to an end, the infant mortality figures for those who remain illiterate and for those educated in primary school remain more or less unchanged. So it means that we have read in the paragraph, the rate of infant mortality remained unchanged at the end of the National Literacy Crusade. So the answer of the question number 22 is no. Because the question is, the women who had learned to read through the National Literacy Crusade showed greatest change in infant mortality, whereas in the passage there is no change. The rate of infant mortality for primary educated women remained unchanged. Question number 23. The women who had learned to read through the National Literacy Crusade had the lowest rates of mortality. The woman is the keyword, read through the National Literacy Crusade is the keyword, lowest rate of mortality is the keyword. Let's read the paragraph. In the paragraph 5, we read that for women educated in primary school, however, the infant mortality rate was significantly lower at 80 per 1,000. Whereas in the third line of the paragraph 6, for all those women who learned to read through the campaign means National Literacy Crusade, the infant mortality rate was 84 per 1,000. So we can say that before the National Literacy Crusade, the infant mortality rate was 80 per 1,000, and after the National Literacy Crusade, the mortality rate is 84 per 1,000. That is 4% more than the start. So the infant mortality rate for the women who had learned through the National Literacy Crusade increased by 4%. Whereas the question is, women who had learned to read through National Literacy Crusade had lowest rates of child mortality. So our answer for the question number 23 is no. Question number 24. After the National Literacy Crusade, the children of the women who remained illiterate were found to be severely malnourished. Malnourished means not fed well. It means that those women who remained illiterate, their children were not fed well. After the children of women severely malnourished are the keywords. Let's try to find the answer for the question number 24. In the last line of the paragraph 6, the children of newly literate mothers were also better nourished than those of women who could not read. It means that the children of newly educated mothers were also better nourished than the children of women who are illiterate. So we have read a comparison of nourishment, but we did not read that the children of illiterate mothers were fed badly or unhygienically. So the answer of the question number 24 is not given.